Hello, everyone, and welcome to Publish Me, Punish Me, a comedy series that's examining deal practices within the games industry with me, Evva Karr, founder and CEO at Glitch.
And me, Sun M, the studio director of Perfect Garbage. Each episode will dive into indie publishers, crowdfunding, equity deals, and more.
So whether it's the good, the bad, or just plain yikes, we're going to talk about it all.
If you're interested in discussions about the design and business of video games, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel below.
It's season 2. It's season 2.
It's season 2.
Yeah, I don't even think we told people that last season ended.
Well, you won't believe it.
Well, it ended and we're on season 2 now.
How are we starting this season?
We have a Q&A. We were like, well, we should do something special, do something different, right?
You know what? This is a tangent, but I was reading the YouTube comments and someone said that they laughed at my die by my hand joke. And I appreciate that someone else would appreciate that kind of humor, which is I talk like a medieval villain.
What have we done since last season?
Fun thing, since we last spoke, we announced that we have my studio, Perfect Garbage, has an Xbox deal. So we're releasing Love Shore this year on Xbox, which is very exciting for me.
We also made some announcements, right? Like we made some announcements about the Moonrise Fund. Yay. We announced the first 3 teams that we're working with.
Who are they? I wonder. Crazy.
I don't know. We announced the first 3 teams that we're starting off with, at least in year 1 here. And then I'm also somewhere else right now. I'm not in Minnesota at the moment. I'm somewhere warmer. I'm trying to leave for a little while because you know what? Like COVID winters really mess with my mental health. So I drove away for the winter and now I'm somewhere warm. So those are the 2, I guess, like biggest things. And also
there's one more thing.
What's the other thing?
Future of Play Direct this winter.
Oh yeah, we had a really great Future of Play Direct, and I hope we pan over to Alana because
I'm not on the screen. But
yes,
okay.
You're gonna be on the screen, Alana.
The ghost of Alana.
No.
Sometimes I can still hear her voice.
Yes, Future of Play Direct happened at the Game Awards, and it was awesome. There were like 30-something teams that participated. We had someone crash the show. Oh god, it was a hell of a lot of fun, and we were all sitting just in Discord together. Like all the devs were sitting huddled in Discord together being like, we're afraid of the Twitch stream. We're afraid of the Twitch stream. And I thought it was very sweet.
It was a surprisingly nice Twitch stream.
Would recommend, would go back. So you might see us back, coming up coming up during E3 this year. And those are all of my things.
They were very good things. They were very good things.
All right. Well, moving on. One of the big things for today's episode is that we're going to do rapid fire Q&A because there were a lot of questions from last season. Folks either DM'd or these were just comments that were on our YouTube channel. So we're going to go ahead and just go through a series of rapid fire questions. Just to kick off the season, I figured that this would be a really fun way to just do it, especially with all the folks who have come along with us from last season. So first question, Sun, do you want to do the honors?
No.
Yes, do it.
The first question, I'm like scared. The first question asked, is it better to pitch a lower budget to seem more reasonable or pitch a reasonable budget where people are all getting paid well? Triple I in parentheses. So to give like a smaller gist of the question, is it better to undersell yourself but guarantee funding in some way versus sell yourself to what you think your studio and team deserve, but be higher than a budget someone might be willing to put in?
I want to say ask for what you deserve. God damn it. But that comes with a lot of caveats, right? Like
there's a million caveats.
Yeah, but at the same time, I do find that all developers, every single developer who is watching this, please ask for more money for your games. Stop taking $50,000 agreements for sim ship deals. Like just stop, because they're a nightmare and those don't actually help you or anyone for all that matter. It is much more of a race to the bottom and it is not fun.
Vibes. I agree. I'm going to be the darker side of that conversation and say sometimes you will have to undersell yourself. I'm going to be negative. I'm just kidding. It's not negative.
It's not. I think you're being realistic. Yeah.
Sometimes you will have to undersell yourself, not because you are worth less. You are never worth less, but because you are making concessions, is it basically?
You're making concessions.
Yeah, with yourself and your team on how you want to best fund what you're working on. Whether that means underselling yourself, but having a higher revenue return rate, whether it means needing a publisher, so looking for other funding sources that can help bolster what the publisher is willing to give you. There's going to be times where you're not going to get the amount that you need to pay everyone happily. And those are the times you're going to have to get creative. But I really want to push that you should get creative. You should never settle for a deal term that is just below a standard that you need. And if you have to, you should make sure you have as many strategies as you can to kind of bolster that effort so that you're not burning yourself out later. Ava mentioned it perfectly, especially with SimShip deals. There's a lot of work to be done before it releases. A lot of work. So, as anything you can to soften that blow is really, really important. Grants, funds, crowdfunding, little things like that.
Yeah. So definitive answer, it's complicated, but if you can, try to ask for more. And when you can't ask for more, get creative, right? It's a very complicated question, a very good question.
It's unfortunately you have to feel it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And every single time you are pitching for your new game, you might be in a different scenario, right? Like if you're pitching your first game, it's very different than you asking for funding and for a budget for your fifth game.
Whenever you're pitching to, make sure you know the scope. And publishers are actually pretty honest if you ask them directly. Like I like to ask before I even start the pitch, because I know it teaches me how to formulate what I want to highlight throughout the pitch, where I say, what's your funding cap right now? What are you looking for? And asking that before might help you organize your thoughts as you're pitching or talking about it. Sometimes this information is secret, so hunt around, but it's knowing that number helps a lot when deciding what you can budget and who you want to talk to.
I'll add to you though, Sun, which is that most of the time folks will be very honest and answer you as to what their budget range is. It's just not publicly disclosed. So I think it's really smart to just simply ask. But if you end up asking all of the publishers out there, it's kind of a nightmare. So be wary and be careful with your time. That's all I'm going to say. Next question that came up was, what is the best time to pitch?
When you're ready.
Literally, when you don't need the money.
Honestly, dude, correct. Don't be desperate pitching. It sounds really obvious, but they can smell it. And also, the best time to pitch is when you are further along than your release date, so you have time to organize that with the publisher, or you're closer to your release date. And I know it sounds really weird to be like far in advance or a lot closer and not a lot of the middle, though you can still try in the middle. And it's because sometimes publishers will find that they have an unexpected amount of funding near the end and near your release date and be more willing to take on games. Or sometimes publishers are planning 2 to 3 years ahead and are looking to fit timelines. So it's, again, another one of those feel it out energies.
And I think that you bring up a really good point, Sun, like at the beginning or towards close to launch. What you're really hitting at, which we haven't, I don't think we've said out loud yet, is folks who can have the opportunity who often have the opportunity to pitch at those earlier stages are oftentimes being bet on for their potential. And folks who are closer to the finish line are actually being bet on, or at least being taken up on their results. So we can talk all day long about that, maybe in a whole nother episode, but it is something to think about as to when might be the best time for you, who are you, what stage are you currently at. We have many episodes specifically about that under episode 3, who gets publishing deals, but it is really important to know.
I will say a little piece of advice is I actually reached out to publishers like months before I started pitching, just to casually chat and ask what the vibe is. When are they looking for games? And just like we mentioned before about transparency on the amount of funding, a lot of publishers will be willing to share we're looking specifically for games launching in 2024, or we're looking for this type of genre. And that might help, stop you from burning out. If you have to go through pitching everybody, you can kind of narrow your list. So highly recommend just reaching out and asking. It might not be viable all the time. It's difficult to get somebody to talk to, but it's a good way to get around it.
All right. Next up, moving on.
How large or how small are indie teams?
They vary. I would say indie, or the smallest game dev team, is 1 person. right? You are but one
person.
but one. I have seen teams that can go up to, for example, like 30, 40, 50. So I would say small range teams are anywhere between 1 and maybe 100.
Yeah, I think we have different definitions. I feel like if you have 100 people on your studio, it's not that you're not indie, but we tend to associate if you could afford 100 people in your studio, then you might not be as indie as maybe the question is asking for.
See, then we're going to get into defining indie, and to me, it's all about money, right? Yeah. Like it's literally just
afford 100 people.
Yeah, I mean,
capital.
Again, yeah, right. If we're going to define it by anything, I would actually like to define it by their budget, right? What budget are they working within? So if it's indie, like one person who's working full time and their BFFs who are working part time with them, that's probably in, the under 500,000 mark. And then when you're thinking about the next step beyond that, it's like 500,000 to the 3 million mark. And then it keeps going, right? When you get into the 10 million mark, etc. So I think the range is really based off of, in terms of sizes, it's your budget and what you can afford.
And yeah, it's just like Ava said, it's all about range and all about budget. How much money you have, how many people you can pay versus full-time contractor. Because you can have 100 people and if they're all contractor, that's a different setup or scenario.
Yeah.
So yeah. But between me and you, that's my dog. You better not.
Oh my goodness.
This is Nora.
We have Nora.
She's the queen. Wave, Nora.
Yes. Oh, okay. Next question with Nora. How does the genre or type of game impact your pitching?
We've actually talked about this question back in episode 3. If you remember, you cited it earlier, Ava, which is who gets publishing deals. So to give you like the long and short of it, genre and type of game does impact who you're pitching to and what your maybe comp titles as well as data will provide as to whether the success of your game is going to be achieved in the market that you're looking at.
Yes, it does impact your pitching, whether it's who you're pitching to, what budget range you're pitching in, your audience, all of those things. Yes, it absolutely does matter. And please go ahead and watch and find out more on season 1, episode 3, who gets publishing deals. I promise you there's lots of information over there.
Next, my question to you is, what do publishers want to see in a pitch deck?
Oh, I've made tweets about this. A couple of things. One, people want to see your vision. What is the vision for the game? What we were just actually talking about. What genre is it in? How much are you thinking about selling it for? Which platforms are you going to come out with it? All of these things that you have in terms of the vision of the game. What is your core loop? What is the vibe? What is the feel? All of those things they'll want to know. Yes, vision equals vibe. So yes, vision, key features, target audience, comparables, subtraction, roadmap and milestones, the ask, and also your team and advisors.
We throw in some bonuses. A video, highly recommend a video of whatever you're working on or you hope to bring in. The visual, especially if it's early on in the pitch deck, helps the person being pitched to understand what your game looks like throughout the whole concept. Recommend that. Art, lots of art. They don't like to read words. No one likes to read words. Your words should be important, but make it real dazzling to look at. I also found that out.
Sorry, just give them the old razzle test.
Literally, if it could sparkle, make it sparkle. Ava mentioned it really, really well, is that you want to leave your pitch deck understanding like thematically, systematically, and comparably what your game is about.
Son, I think you and I disagree a little bit on this, and it just depends on who you're pitching to, right? And when you're pitching to them and who you are. And we're going to keep talking about this, but
what do you disagree with? Fight me.
When you're saying the sparkle is fucking expensive. It is. It just simply is. And it actually asks for a lot of the team to be able to make some of that if you're, for example, putting it into the game itself.
Oh, you mean a video like that? Gotcha. Yeah, it is.
It's expensive. There's a lot of nuance here that I just have a I have feelings about that.
Well, I think like my counter is that if you don't have the sparkle, you're white.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna tell the people who are like me that if you're gonna do a pitch deck, you unfortunately will be tasked with having to represent your game as closely to what it would look like if it was real as possible. And it's a nightmare, which is why my first question, way back when they said, what's the best time to pitch, is when you're ready. When you're in a good place, if you can.
And I hear all of that and I acknowledge it. And you're right. It comes back to what's the best time to pitch, right? And when I had said earlier, what's the best time to pitch? It's, well, what is your game? Who are you? What position are you in? How many games have you shipped?
Yeah.
I do think that if we go back here to talk about, well, can you pitch early or should you pitch later?
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
There's an answer as to where you are in life, who you are, and when you should potentially pitch, because some people take pitches off of potential. And also some people receive funding off of potential and others receive funding off of results. So
the vast majority is in the latter category. Let me tell you.
You and I are in the latter category.
You're right. The clean answer is all of the stuff Ava said. Check out the tweet, but also check out the Founders Kit that Glitch hosts. They have done an amazing job of collecting a bunch of pitch decks with the results oftentimes on that pitch deck. So you can like actually get real-time experience. I believe all the numbers are wiped. So if you're that budget person question, you're not going to get your answer there.
But you should DM everyone.
DM them and just ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just ask. I know that, our Hyperdot one is on there, and we usually just share some information, but it's not like just DM us, just talk to us. Moving on. How many publishers does one usually pitch to? And are you allowed to talk to multiple publishers at once?
So I know why the second part of this question was asked, because I know what conversation I was having when it was asked, and it was talking about the relationship between book publishing. So in book publishing, actually when you're finding an agent, there's an expectancy that you let that person respond before moving on, and like doing so, as you're working with reaching out to folks. Games publishing is not the same. I will say, and I'm sure Ava will talk about this more, there is nuance to it. There is like relationships that you're keeping in mind or folks that you're trying to work with in certain ways. But I'm of the mind of casting that net long and wide. Make a list of publishers that you like the work that they've released. Check out if their budgets are within your scope and start from there. I always recommend prioritizing the folks that you really, really want to work with. You're going to be at your highest energy when you're starting to pitch. The counter to that is maybe you want practice. So maybe you might talk to folks that you're interested in, but they're not your like dream team. That's okay too. It's all about organizing that. But you should correct me if I'm wrong, Ava, but you can pitch to as many people as you want.
Yeah, you absolutely can pitch to as many people as you want. And again, it's going to come back to like, who are you? Where are you at on your build, and where are you at in your game or in your game cycle? What does your team look like? How many games have you shipped, right? Like, we're going to keep coming back to that when you self-reflect and before you start pitching. And I actually also agree with you, son, like talk to as many as you can, but if you have relationships with some better than others, and especially if some of the areas that they're interested in, maybe prioritize them, right? And the more that you know and the more information that you can gather, the better off that you'll be in those conversations.
All right. My question to you, Ava, is what's the difference? And this is more of a technical question. When you have the words prototype, a build, and a demo. I think this comes from someone just starting out, looking at what publishers are looking for and seeing these words on what they want. Do you mind giving us a little summary real quick?
Yes, I can. Okay, so a build can, for example, be a demo or a prototype. A build is basically a version of your game. So you have made a build of it, and it might be version 1.2 or whatever that is. And you might that version might be the prototype, or that version might be your demo that is like feature complete or something of sorts, right? So a build is kind of the overarching idea of, you know, your current version of your game. Kind of like if you're new to games, let's say, you know, you're writing a book or you're writing something. It is your first draft. And so it is not complete, but it has, you know, the majority of the things that you want in there that people might want to see or something of sorts.
Demos are things that you're most likely to find on the store page. They'll like have a demo free to try. Prototypes are usually for like personal or pitching reasons or proof of concept. So like when you have a build, the moment you give that build to someone else and it's not done, it's a prototype. It's like in my mind, you know what I mean? It's like, here's what we think the game is.
Yeah.
And a demo is something you've polished off as an example of the game.
An example of the game. Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
None of these should be perfect is the point.
We have one episode coming up later this season that is all about prototypes and prototype funds. So just stick around for that and look forward to that in the future. In that case, that is the wrap for this episode, right, Sun?
Yeah, I'm really excited that we answered a bunch of questions. Thank you, wonderful people, for joining us on this episode of Publish Me, Punish Me. I hope that you learned something and enjoyed the ride and that we answered one of your many questions. And if not, I'd love if you wouldn't mind sharing those questions in the comment section below. And if you happen to have a deal that maybe you want us to discuss anonymously, we have a Google form link down below. Send it our way.
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed the show. And also you can continue the conversation with us over at discord.gg/heyglitch. And we'll see you next time.
Cabbage time. You know, they stopped me from eating cabbage this episode. They like literally told me to stop eating cabbage before we started recording.
You were chomping too loud.
Some of us need to eat.